Rick Kaufman, Executive Director of Community Relations and Emergency Management for Bloomington Public Schools, with a presentation on right-sizing the budget. Proposed reductions have been presented to the school board. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an informational overview of those proposed budget reductions, and as noted, these reductions proposals are initial options that were presented to the school board over the last couple weeks. As such, we do expect there will be further refinement based on the school board's review, feedback, and additional questions. Right-sizing the budget is a multi-year process to restructure, reorganize, and reduce expenses to bring the district spending in line with its revenues. While there are several factors contributing to a structural deficit, meaning expenses are outpacing revenue, the district has reached a point where it must cut $3.5 million in order to ensure a balanced 2020-21 budget that is approved in June of 2020. District and school teams have drafted options for the school board to consider to meet the targeted reduction of $3.5 million, and it is important to note that the school board makes the final decision. There are 5 areas that have developed reduction targets: high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, ESC Essential Office, and a reorganization of the Media Tech Integration Program. All of those reduction targets on the right side of the screen equals to $3.5 million. The presentation to follow will be a high-level review of each of the areas of the budget reduction targets and what it may mean to full-time equivalent staff reductions and other areas that will be impacted. At the high school, the target of $858,000, we provide a reference in these target slides of a full-time equivalent reduction. In other words, 9 full-time equivalent staff persons would be cut at the high school level to reach $858,000. That's a reference point. What the high schools and the middle schools have done is to provide a couple of different options to the board to consider. In the high school options, they came up with 3 options, and there are 2 line items that are consistent through the 3. The first line item is an increase in ratio to 1, which is really a class size increase. The impact would be a little over 2 full-time equivalent staff person reductions at each site for a total of 4.5 full-time equivalent staff. Line item 2 is an increase in high school athletics and activities fees. The current average at each school is $160 for an athletic or a sport and $55 for an activity or fine arts program. The increase calls for an additional $50 per sport and $40 per activity. When we get into these next 4 line items, we see there's a change in the proposal. In the first option in A, if the recommendation is to eliminate middle school athletics, you combine lines 1, 2, and 3, you reach the target for the high schools. In option B, we see that the middle school athletic program would remain, but we would recommend an elimination of the athletics and activities busing. What this would do is to require students to provide their own transportation to any athletic, sport, or fine arts or activity event location if it's off-site. In option C, if we retain middle school athletics and we retain providing the transportation that we currently do for students to participate in those programs off-site, those athletic contests and events, it would require us to look at limiting other parts of the athletic and activity budget, including specific athletic teams and specific fine arts programs. Now, because those more high-profile sports activities like football and basketball and show choir, for example purposes only, it would be needed to make up to reach that target. Less high-profile sports does not provide the additional resources needed to reach the target. Again, these are certainly not the best of options, but they are options that were presented to the board and the board will continue to review. The middle school target is a little bit more complex. The middle schools, all schools experience a reduction in enrollment or an increase in enrollment each year. As a result of that, a reduction in enrollment has an impact on a school because less students impacts the ability to hire some staffing to meet the needs of students based on the enrollment. For the middle school, the reduction due to enrollment is a $400,000. The reference point here is 3.7 full-time equivalent staff equals $400,000. Now, the budget cut target of $690,000 with a reference point of 7 full-time equivalent personnel, combined with the annual reduction due to enrollment, is a total budgetary impact on middle schools at a little over $1 million. The middle school options are two. The first one, option A, is a variation of the current middle school model that has been in place for a number of years. What you're seeing on the screen in the shades provides you with all three schools. The shaded boxes, though, outlines or identify some disparities between the schools. Let me get into it, explain a little bit further. So in the first line item, we see a reduction of staff based on enrollment. Because we will see a decrease in enrollment at Oak Grove Middle and Valley View Middle, but not at Olson Middle, Oak Grove Middle and Valley View must reduce a full-time equivalency of 6 staff persons. Because Olson Middle School is either increasing or staying the same, they do not see a reduction in staff as a result of the enrollment. Now, going back to the middle school model to meet the target, a reduction in staff would also be required based on a change to this modified middle school model. For Oak Grove and Valley View, we would go from 10 core teachers per level to 8, thus reducing teachers in this case specifically 2 at those 2 sites. Olson Middle would see no change, again based on its enrollment, and would consist of 10 core teachers per level. Now, core classes are things like math and language arts, science, and social studies. Here again, we see the disparity with Oak Grove Middle and Valley View Middle needing to reduce by 1 from 5 to 4 core classes, and Olson Middle no change, again because of its enrollment. Our exploratory classes where we would see likely parity. Exploratory classes are things like tech ed or family and consumer science, world language, and orchestra. Just those examples. There are other examples, those give you some. At each, you'll see a reduction, and those are to be determined based on continued exploration of the impact of what those classes are and what the board prefers. There would be an increase in class size. As a result, Oak Grove and Valley View would go to 30 students above their current average, and there's no change at Olson Middle because their current average is at 30, again, based on enrollment. In the option B, the middle school principals have proposed a 6-period day, which some would consider a junior high or a high school model. And in this case, we see more parity, less of those shaded boxes. We would still see a class size increase of students per class. On this case, 28 to 33 students on average, and you can see the current averages. The classes would remain the same, all students, 4 core and 2 exploratory classes across all 3 school sites. Again, we would see a reduction in exploratory classes to be determined, but that too would be experienced across all 3 sites. Where we do not have parity is in the reduction of staff because we are staffing on enrollment, not the model, the middle school model. And so in this case, you can see Oak Grove Middle and Valley View Middle have a greater full-time equivalent reduction than Olson Middle. In summary, option A preserves a variation of the current middle school model with common grade levels and collaborative team time. There'll be a reduction in staff, an increase in class sizes, and a variation in programming across sites, which results in less parity. Option B eliminates the middle school model, but reflects more of a junior high or high school model. There would be a reduction in staff as a result of a loss of enrollment, increase in class size, and similar programming across sites, which creates that more parity across the 3 sites. At the elementary school, the budget target of $650,000 is a reference point of 3.3 full-time equivalent staff. In this particular case, the elementary schools would see an additional savings from the proposed media tech integration restructuring plan. And a screen video of the slides of that media tech integration restructuring plan will be posted on the Right Sizing Budget website. That reduction of $400,000, equivalent to 4 full-time equivalent staff members, is that additional savings for elementary schools. To make up the target then, there would be a proposed increase in the ratio at grades 1 through 3 by 1 and by a half at grades 4 and 5. And you can see the current ratios of 25.5 and 28.5 at those respective grade levels. There would be no change to the kindergarten ratio. The reduction of $210,000 would be equivalent to 0.2 full-time equivalent staff persons per site. Now this is an average per site because some sites are going to experience a reduction, others may not, because of that fluctuation in enrollment from one site to the next. And the elementary schools must have full sections. The last area that I will cover is the Educational Services Center or Central Office. It's important to note here that over the last 8 to 10 years, budget reductions have been absorbed by cuts that have not impacted classrooms to a great deal, other than those enrollment fluctuations from year to year. That has resulted in Educational Services Center district administration making reductions in administrative and other positions at central office by not filling some based on retirements or persons leaving, funding shifts, and things of that nature. So since 2016-17, the ESC Central Office has cut $9 million. 34% were the result of administrative operations and budget adjustments and shifts. $629,000 in administrative salaries and positions are part of that $9 million in cuts since 2016 and 17. So the ESC Central Office proposal target of $500,000 is equivalent to 11 full-time equivalent employees. The proposal to the board is to reduce staffing of $319,000, which is 4.5 full-time equivalent staff members. Those positions would come from multiple departments and exist of either current positions, current staff, or positions that have been unfilled this year and would remain so in future years. Controllable budgets, $108,000, would also come from multiple departments. Controllable budgets are things like printing and postage and supplies. There would also be a proposed shift of expenditures from the General Education Fund to Community Education and Alt Facilities funding of $74,000 for a total of $500,000 and 4.5 full-time equivalent staff members. So next steps. Right Sizing the Budget website is now active and live on the district's website. By going to the Right Sizing the Budget website, you'll get more information and an opportunity to provide feedback or questions and lodge your concerns. Any questions that are proposed will be provided in a response, and there's a link to a frequently asked questions and response page that will be updated daily as additional questions and comments are shared on that feedback forum. You'll also find this presentation and other presentations, and we will continue to provide information as it becomes available. We also invite you to email or call your school board members and to attend any upcoming study sessions on right sizing the budget process, as well as to view the board as it deliberates on the various different proposals and options to come. Those study sessions are currently scheduled for Wednesday, December 11th, Monday, January 16th, and Monday, January 6th. Please note that study sessions begin at 6 p.m. and are held in the boardroom at the Educational Services Center in Oak Grove Middle School. There is an additional public comment period during the Monday, December 9th meeting of the board, a regular meeting that starts at 7 p.m. We have asked the board to make a decision by January 13th because of the need to develop any schedule changes, models, as well as prepare for staffing development and the budgets in each of the departments and the levels and how that would impact staff and programs. That January 13th meeting is also open to the public. We thank you for your interest and your feedback, and we invite you to visit Right Sizing the Budget website to become more informed, in tune, and engaged. And we thank you for your continued support of Bloomington Public Schools.